Collins, Pastor D, host of this show, and I just want to welcome you to Dunamis Woman and Ram today. This is a topic that we must learn about, which is the HPV. What is it, a virus, Ariel?
The human papilloma virus.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay, so now you see that I am here with Ariel M. Fuller, who is Miss Windy City 2013 once again. She joined us on last week, and we were just so honored, and she's back again because we're going to talk about things that most people don't want to talk about. So we're here to educate. So Ariel, thank you for coming back again with me.
You're welcome.
Representing our youth, representing our young people, and being daring enough and bold enough to talk about some things that we just don't want to talk about, particularly in the church. Real talk, real life, real issues, and yes, we do serve a real God. And last week we were talking about the virus and why people need to be educated. Just recap a little bit more on that, particularly with our young people.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit more in regards to youth, as you mentioned, and there's so much when it comes to HPV to talk about. So last week we mentioned about youth, you know, just empowering them to go receive their pap smears, to not just go get tested for sexually transmitted infections, but part of being a woman is to go receive a pap smear, and even for their boyfriends or for the men that they are married to encourage women, you know, and their wives to go receive their yearly pap smear and not to forget it. And so that's kind of how we touch bases in regards to youth and just knowing your body and knowing every part of your body. And you have to respect who you are. And so going to go receive a pap smear is one way to, you know, respect your body and just take care of your health.
This particular show, I want us to focus on what many women don't focus on in the church, and that's our men. Oftentimes when we're in that type of venue or in that type of atmosphere, we put the women with the women, and then we have the men with the men. And I firmly believe that we're complementary and we are interdependent of one another. That's why we do have Dunamis Woman and Ram, which is Real Awesome Men Ministries, the magazine, and we're all about women and men. You know, some things that I believe a man need to hear from a woman. Not that a woman tells a man what to do. That's not what I'm saying. But as far as why we need them, why they need to be empowered, why they need to be educated. Our young men are coming up. They're going to fulfill the position of a husband. They're going to fulfill the position of a leader, a father. I would love to see it. I am going to see you fulfill a platform where, particularly in the church, you're talking to the young men. We oftentimes think it's a woman's responsibility to take care of the body. But when we have sexual intercourses with them, we affect them and they affect us. Concerning this, why should our real awesome men be knowledgeable?
Well, that's huge because of the fact that when it comes to HPV, and I'm not a medical expert in this area, but I have experienced life, and I have read on HPV multiple times. And so the huge thing that I see and that is important for me to even notice is that men are the #1 carriers of HPV, and they don't know because they don't have a cervix. They don't go and receive a pap smear, and that's what makes pap smears even more important because it's something that we women only have.
Correct.
And so men, they don't realize that they're carrying this virus. And so we're meeting them, we're touching them, we're engaging in sexual intercourse with them, and you can contract HPV just from contact, skin contact. So if someone says, oh, well, I tried to have sex, but we didn't really do anything. If that skin touched you, you can contract HPV. And so they have to understand that. And so men fail to realize that it's so important for them to be proactive to tell women to go get a pap smear because they are the carriers of it and they don't know.
Correct.
And they will never, that you can get tested for the HPV strand in your body, but it is expensive, and if a woman goes to receive her pap smear, you'll know if, you know, you came in contact with HPV, and there's so many different strands out there. There's over 100 types of strands of HPV, and so you can't really detect what man I received it from, or did I get it from this one, did I get it from that one. You might as well not even try, because there's so many out there, and 80% of women and men come in contact with it. But men need to know that you carry it. And so just because you don't have a cervix does not mean that you do not carry HPV and that you cannot give it to a woman. And HPV does affect men. So it is vital for them to know that.
And it's amazing because, you know, when we contract anything, you know, whether it's, you know, a sexual transmitted disease, you know, even when women get pregnant, you know what I'm saying, we have a tendency to take the blame, you know.
Oh, you get the blame real heavy.
I thought you were on birth control. I thought you were doing this, you know.
Yes.
Where we have to be empowered to take all of the knowledge and the information and utilize it, where they just go ahead and reap some of the pleasurable benefits, you know. So, you know, we want to walk in this thing together.
Yes.
As what would you say? Because even as you speak to the young men as well as the young women, I think both of them need to be in the room as you go to the churches and the schools and all of that. What type of conversation do they need to have? Because realistically, we know we'll take care of all of this if we just live according to how God's standards are for our life. But realistically, people are not doing that, you know. But even before you know, you don't get tested, you don't go, but even meeting a young man, how would you bring up this conversation? How would you, how will you enter into that?
See, and the thing is that when I talk about women going to go receive a pap smear, that's to test for HPV and the HPV strand, but there's two types. So there's HPV that creates cervical cancer, that, you know, leads to cervical cancer. Then you have HPV, which is genital warts. And so having this conversation, it's two separate ways you can go with it. So now a woman could say, you know, hey, I have HPV, I'm high risk for cervical cancer, and I'm going to keep receiving my pap smear every year to make sure that it does not turn into cervical cancer. That seems to be more relaxed because of the fact that she really isn't experiencing a whole lot of symptoms, and she's just really being proactive. But if a man sees genital warts on his penis, and we're just going to say that because men do have penis, then it's an alarm factor, because then it looks almost like a sexually transmitted infection. So it's, what did you give me? Why do I have genital warts? Different things in that aspect. And so then the blame game comes. Who'd you sleep with? It wasn't me. I don't have this. And so a lot of goes into that, and so that conversation could be more controversial more than the cervical cancer. But the thing is that the conversation has to happen between both. So if I were to sit them both down, I will let them both know about the two different types. One, because we have genital warts, and then we have cervical cancer, and then also in the fact that because 80% of women come in contact, women and men come in contact with it, there's no need to argue about who received it from who or how it came, because you just have to be able to fight. Your body has to fight the virus off. And so that's usually what happens. And so it's really, with any time of sitting down with any conversation when it comes to sexually transmitted infections, there shouldn't be any type of controversy.
And we have set the component of our health and wealth of dunamis women, that you're out there educating on HPV. You know, I am educating on HIV. You know, one of the things is that not just the education, ooh, don't get HIV or do this. It's a lot that's implemented in the teachings is assertiveness skills. You know, how do I become assertive without being aggressive? You know, oftentimes we wait to be passive aggressive. After something happened, then I'm going off. You know, I'm flying off the roof. Assertiveness is understanding how to take ownership of myself.
And you have to. And the thing is that men have to take ownership, because of the fact that
the young people don't know how to.
And they don't. And they don't want to, and they don't have to, because it's embarrassing. But it shouldn't be embarrassing, because it's life. You know, this is the risk that comes with sexual intercourse. And so you have to understand, yes, the 5 minutes may be great. You know, you lose your virginity, you should have waited till you were married anyway, and you may not have lost it with the right person, but there's other things that come with sex. Sex is just not sex. You have sexually transmitted infections, you have the human papillomavirus, what we're talking about today. So you have to take ownership that when you're engaging in an activity, that there's other things that come along with it. And so instead of being alarmed, you have to say, okay, well, here's the risk that I'm presenting myself to. And so as a man, you have to be able to know that this is something that you could carry in your body. And a lot of times, even with women, if we're talking about genital warts, she may not have symptoms on the outside. So she may receive a pap smear and find out that she has genital warts on the inside. And so then it's even more alarming, because it's like, well, we didn't see anything. We didn't see any symptoms, or I didn't know, you know, that this was going on. And so yeah, I mean, they really just have to take ownership to know that they're engaged in something that comes with a lot of risk that's involved. And you can't be fearful about it. To talk about it, you can't be scared. You just got to be proactive.
And I think that a lot of fear grips people's hearts, particularly when we're talking about something that, you know, can drastically impact our life. But reality is that we deal with those things after the fact. You know, so we're taught as a people to deal with things reactively, you know, as opposed to proactively, you know. So we're definitely talking about proactive measures. Let's talk to the parents real quick. We're going to end up going to a break, but I want to, you know, talk from a parental perspective, you know, even with the PAP, okay? Because I'm just so reminded of when you and Allison was growing up in teenagers, you know, and it's like, oh, you know, you have to go get the PAP, you have to do this or whatever. But then I had to learn some more things about you, you know. I had to learn, you know, sexually active, you know, we had to talk about certain things. And sometimes as a parent, that's not easy to face because we want to have control. You know, we want to know, don't do this. You know, reality is that what we mostly tell you all don't do, you are going to do. You are going to do.
And you mentioned a good point, because parent interaction is a huge thing with the young girl going to go receive a pap smear. Because if they don't know, talking to a doctor already, there's a barrier in communication there, because you are worried about how much should you disclose to your doctor. But I think when you have that comfortability to talk to your parents about it, you're able to see your doctor in that same aspect, because you know they're there for your health. And so parents, sometimes they don't want to know that their daughter is sexually active or their son is sexually active, and so they dismiss it. But at the same time, you're going to be alarmed if she comes home and says, hey, I have HPV. And so which scenario would you like to be in? Would you like to be holding her hand while she was receiving her first pap smear, empowering her that she's making a correct decision for her life to be proactive? Or do you want to hold her hand when she's on the hospital bed and she's having and she has cervical cancer? So there are two, you could decide where you want to be. And so parents have to know that conversation has to happen, and not really because of the fact that it's your child, but what'd you do? At this age, what were you doing?
Well, I had to look at the fact of what was I doing?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Before I got you. What was I doing?
I am your
15?
child.
Right.
So,
and that's something I don't want to face. You know what I'm saying? Because
it's a case.
And it's the real deal. You know, because I don't want to think that what I was doing at 15 and 16 or 17, that you're doing that. I mean, that's just something that I don't want to really, really think about. But reality is, you know, I have to suck it up and I have to face it, because even the time frame that I was living in, things are more accessible to you all. The things that I had was doing, you all could do it 10 times greater and 10 times better. We're going to take a break, and I want you all to really view this, because Dunamis Woman Empowerment Organization is really, really designed, established to empower your youth. They have the power down on the inside of them, but that power is not to come out aggressively. It's to come out assertively and understanding who they are and the greatness that lies on the inside of them. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come right back. I'm Pastor D, and we're going to talk about more parental guidance through the journey and the process of your son and daughter. We'll be right back.
Are you a parent who feels like your daughter's just going up way too fast and learning about the world so quickly? Are you a student who needs to understand, what am I going to do with my life? What school am I going to go to? What is my life purpose? Or are you a girl who just wants to understand boys and dealing with parents and school life drama? Well, I'm here to tell you that I have an amazing organization called Dunamis Woman Empowerment for girls who are 13 through 17 who want to understand who they are, to have real talk about real life issues. And so you will be experiencing a great, awesome workshop to help enlighten you, to help encourage you, but also challenge you to think about your surroundings, think about who you want to be, think about what you want in your life, preventing you from being a victim to your surroundings. So I encourage you to join me and go to our website, www.dunamis-woman.com, to learn more about me and learn more about the workshop and the things that we have to offer for you to really become the woman that you want to become.
I would like to welcome you back, and as you just saw from that recent commercial, I will be one of the facilitators of Dunamis Woman Empowerment Organization, which is an amazing organization for women and men. So I really challenge you to just reach out to me. If you want to get a taste of what that workshop is like, you could have your sons and daughters, your friends and family, gather them together, whether it's at a church, whether it's at an organization, whether it's even in your backyard. I have fun wherever I go, because what we're talking about today in HPV, that's something that I put in a segment of that workshop, which is sex in our society. And we just laugh and talk about the seriousness of HPV because it doesn't have to be such a serious topic. You know, you could have fun with it. You could open up, relax about it. And so that is something that I bring to the youth. And so I encourage you to reach out to me for that. But we're just going to keep going and talking about HPV because there's so much different things to talk about. And so as we left off, you know, talking about men and having that conversation and the stigmas, I was just even thinking in the aspect of how people really can be just very, you know, afraid of it. And so that fear, and with parents, even if you don't want to talk about that with your child, even if you don't want to discuss are they being sexually active, you have to break that fear inside of them to know that they can go to a doctor or professional. I even remember, you know, myself being in high school, and, you know, I understood the importance of my gynecologist. And so even when, you know, I had allergic reactions to maybe medicines, or if I had questions, you know, my OBGYN was right there down the street, and I remember, you know, taking my coach's car and saying, I got an OBGYN, you know, I was proactive, you know, because the fact that I had questions that need to be answered, and maybe I didn't want to ask a peer, because what do they know, you know, and so I had to be able to break that fear and know that I can talk to my professional care physician about that. And so it was fear that I developed, and so a lot of times people have that fear, and even if parents, if you have that fear, you have to break that out of your child. Because
and the main thing is I had to break through the fear of understanding that you and Allison was not going to talk to me about everything, you know. As much as I strived, as much as I endeavored, I can't be everything to you and for you. So to take that comfort, whether you had a good OB-GYN, you know, was willing to invest the time in your life, whether you had a person that you can trust, you know, that you can share with, and they were going to give the same thing and the same guidance and the same counsel. But yet, eventually, one thing that I love about both of you all, that eventually, and I will say eventually, you know, you found a safe place that you could come to me. You know, after you've done this, after you've done that, after you've done that. And sometimes we as parents are the final call, you know. But, you know, to create that atmosphere that it eliminated your fears and your noimas, that when you came, you wasn't going to be latched out on, you know, you weren't going to, I'm going to cut your eyes out and all this other stuff, because those are the things that inhibit children from coming. And I have to always remind myself, I didn't want to hear it all, you know, but reality is you were no longer a baby, you know, you were growing up to be women, you know.
People may think, oh, because you're going to OBGYN, you're having sex. Your daughter and son is going to go through changes as a woman. I remember even when I used to nanny, and, you know, I had a little girl come to me one day, and she was like, I have something coming out of me, and I don't know what it is. And I had to be able to sit there and explain to her, you know, you're going into your preteen years, and you're going to start having little changes that's going on. So, you know, it's not even the fact that, you know, your child is having sex. They're going to have changes where they don't know whether how to use proper, you know, things when it comes to their menstrual cycle or tampons and just so many different things. And I'm not afraid to mention it because of the fact that it's real. It's real. Know, you have commercials out there who are saying get plate tags or get this. So you have to know which one do I get? You know, what's the options? What's the risk? How long do you keep a tampon?
How do I use it?
And so it's a lot of things that come into factors where people can overutilize certain things. You know, sometimes it is a time frame of how long you're supposed to leave a tampon in your body. So it's not just sex. It's so many different realms. And so that person has to feel comfortable to talk about it. And if you as a woman or as a parent are comfortable, or as a father, it really is going to affect this your child, because of the fact that they only learn from you, and you can't depend on someone else to teach them.
And that's even what we talk about in the empowerment clinic, you know, even for the women, whether they're your age, my age, or whatever. Talk to your father, not as a father, you know, but as a man, you know. Now, that could be so uncomfortable for some of the parents because they knew what they were as a man, You know what I'm saying? But reality is that man that you were at 20 years old or 25 years old or 19 years old or 16-year-old is the same type of young man that your daughter is going to initially attract, you know. And so when a man think about that, they're like, oh, no, not my daughter, you know. But rather you know about it or not, you know, because things come around in cycles, you know. And that's the beautiful thing about life. We just don't know what to do with them. We're developing on the inside. You know, becoming a woman is not a physical outward thing. You know, just because you have a menstrual cycle don't mean that you're ready developmentally, mentally, and emotionally to have a child. You know, I can say that about some women who are 35 years old, you know. So the developmental process is very, very key, you know, which we're talking about, you know, in the Dunamis Woman Empowerment, where you're targeting youth, you know. What's that age bracket that you basically target?
Between 13 and 17.
So 13 and 17, and those are critical years.
Those are really critical years, because the fact that the way that I was raised, you're introduced to those things a lot faster now. And it doesn't matter your race. And that's a huge thing.
Or your belief.
Yeah, or your belief. You're introduced to things a lot earlier than what I was at my age. And so that age bracket is so critical because of the fact that you don't know what your child is entering when they go out to their world, into school, or to a church camp, or to the store even. I mean, you really don't know what they're going to face or what they're going to hear. And so that age bracket is so critical because of the fact that so much is going to go on throughout that time frame. And that was a critical point in my life where I had to be able to start making critical decisions. So,
and one of the things that we don't understand, or we're not really cognizant of, we talk about it, about us wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness. So we do know we have demonic forces that are coming up against us. However, even as I teach and I empower, we don't know what they look like coming through that vessel, where we're thinking we're dealing with an individual. We're actually encountering a principality. You can never ever make me to believe that it's a man who is a wholesome man without being influenced demonically molest a little girl. You see what I'm saying? And it's not just out there in the world. It's coming through the church. You know what I'm saying? Because of our arresting issues, we give gateway and we give an entrance way to those principalities in our soul. You know, so our kids need to be empowered about that. You know, how do I deal with that? Because anytime we can succumb to that, it's making us feel like we are not worth anything. And it's belittling. It's not just rape. It's not molestation. It's about, you know, when I have sex with a guy, or when I don't know how to talk about these things, and I don't know how to be assertive. And even from a parental perspective, when we don't even permit our children to talk about certain things, we're depriving them of their power. You know, they feel powerless instead of powerful. You know, you as a teenager, you know, when you were a teenager, why did you want to be powerful over your own life?
Well, honestly, because I had no choice but to. You know, I couldn't depend on someone else to do that for me. And that's huge, because I mean, I did have, you know, a high school sweetheart in high school, and if I sent him out to the store to get a product, he'll come back with a different thing. So I had to be, you know, just because you have someone running out for you doesn't mean that they know exactly what's for you, you know. And so I had to take ownership over my own life, because of the fact that no one else was going to do that for me, you know. And no matter how much you think someone loves you or how much they care for you, they cannot make you do anything that you don't want to do yourself. And so that's the huge thing with when we're talking about HPV, because I even want men to know out there, even if you carry the HPV strand, it could create other cancers in you. You know, it may not be cervical cancer, but it could cause throat cancer. So it's important for you to know that you do need to empower your woman, but she has to take that own decision for her own life, because she has a cervix. You don't. And so you have other things that it can turn into, like I said, throat cancer. And so you both have to take ownership, you know, for what's inside of both of you all's body.
And we really don't start dealing with these things until we hear it on the news, you know, through celebrities or things like that. And we shouldn't have to wait in the body of Christ. We shouldn't have to wait as a community. We shouldn't have to wait as a people with families and children to wait for our things to be shown on the news or in the media to be able to talk about it. Technically, you know, we want to be able to empower fathers and mothers and daughters and sons and all those family units to be able to take these type of conversations within the home. You know, and because the home has become so dysfunctional, that we don't really know how to take it back. I think people really want to talk about these things, Ariel. They just don't know how to.
And they do, because anything that lies in you for a long time and that you can't ask questions, it's something that wants to be expressed. It's something that's want to be talked about. And people may think that it doesn't want to be talked about, because when I do talk to young girls, they're very quiet, but all they're doing is they're taking the information in and they're registering it, and then eventually the questions come out. And so, like, for instance, I remember having a workshop and I was talking about not even HPV but yeast infections. You know, women obviously battle with yeast infections, and so, you know, they take it in, and then one time, you know, someone's like, I have a yeast infection,
right,
you know,
right.
and I said, well, now you have all the knowledge to take care of it.
Yeah.
And so they didn't understand it was important for them until they realized that it could actually affect them. And so that just goes to say that you may think that they don't want to talk about it,
but they do.
But these are really questions that go through their head anyway. So all you're doing is you're addressing the silent thoughts that's already in their mind, and that they're not saying, because they're silent thoughts, you know. And so that's something, it's natural to think about those things.
Let me ask you this question. So from a daughter's perspective, which I understand you're developing to be a beautiful young woman, growing up naturally. So how do you feel when I'm transparent about things that I've done as a woman? You know, so when I tell you and Allison, you know, well, you know, I've had more than 4 partners, you know, and you're like, ugh, you know.
Well, I mean, you do the math. I mean, you've been married, you know, look at, you know, you obviously been married more than once. I mean,
Correct.
So you have to do the math over the years you lived. I'm not going to say your age, but I'm pretty sure you didn't lose your virginity at 50. So, I mean, realistically, I didn't feel uncomfortable because of the fact that you have to know, and I used to tell my peers this all the time, what you do as a woman, I guarantee you is the same thing that your mother probably did. Correct. Or what your father has done. And so you have to be able to understand that you have to not talk to them about that, but it's almost comfortable. It's natural. It's like you want to hear that, and not to use that as an excuse, because I've heard women, my peers, use it as an excuse because, oh, my mother did it, so I can do it. Right. And that's no excuse that you can do that because your mother had those habits. Right. And so you have to, even though, you know, they had an open relationship, that doesn't make it right.
And that's my point for bringing it up, because we have to understand as parents, as we can really wrap this up, is that our transparency is not for our children to validate them or give them excuses to go do it, nor for them to bring it back up into our face, but strictly for us to educate them. You know, and I think the best education is right there in the home. I think the best education is from experience. You know, I think the best education, because I endeavor to be transparent with you all, so you won't have to make the same mistakes that I made. So we want to create that atmosphere. We want to do that, and we want to set that for you. So we definitely want you to engage with us. Not only will Ariel come out, I'll come out with, you know, because we want to see daughters and mothers communicate effectively. I promise you, as we continue to grow in life together, it will help them, and it will help all of us have a more stable home, stable church, stable community, and most of all, a stable life. I am Pastor D, and I want to thank Ariel for being back with me, Miss Windy City 2000.